and welcome to Biz Buzz with Bruno. I'm Michael Bruno, your host, and it's presented as always by madstheater.com with the wonderfully talented people behind the scenes. Talking about you, Mr. Barlow. And today we are thrilled beyond belief to have the lovely, the talented, the ever so busy and popular Dana Pelabon. Thank you so much for coming today, Dana.
Thank you for having me on as someone who is similarly lovely and busy and popular.
So for those people that may not have any clue or have never seen a television set or heard a radio or listened to anything in town, tell us a little bit about your backstory. Like, what brought you into all this glamour of politics and theater and everything else that you've been involved in?
So theater was a friend of mine that I worked with. We were in the office, and so back in the day, they had these newspaper things, and they had ads for Broom Street, and they always were in the Isthmus. Mm-hmm. And she was going through the Isthmus. She's like, I think I want to audition for the show, but I don't want to do it by myself. And I was like, I'll go with you. I had done one show in high school randomly as a senior when I was out in Vegas. And then, so I went to this audition with her, and it was for Callan Hardy's play, Judge. And I actually got cast, and she did not. So I was like, sorry. And I started working at Broom Street. And then the first show that I did at the Bartell was with Pete Rydberg. He cast me in the show called Go-Go Girls. And that was, oh my gosh, 2003 was when we did that show. I think I started in 2000-ish at Broom Street, and then just kept doing shows and did some burlesque. We actually, me and my bestie, Jessica Jane Witham. Jessica started a cabaret group, and I had just birthed the child, and she was like, you need to leave your house. I was like, I can't leave my house. I have a baby. And she's like, leave your house. So I started doing producing of that show with her. So we kind of helped birth the burlesque scene that you see here in Madison. And from there, I was working in real estate management, and I got tired of working corporate. I'd done a bunch of managing and supervising of regions, and I was doing marketing. I was a marketing director, and I said, I don't want to make money for people that have money. Mm-hmm. I want to work in the things that bring me joy. And I started working for Porchlight. So I spent almost 8 years there. And throughout this time, I've been creating programs for housing and working in the community because that's just kind of my background and my family's background. All the while kind of doing theater and raising a kid. And I started working with Porchlight for about 8 years. And that was a humbling experience and a learning experience and a great experience on so many different levels. But it was also an exhausting experience. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something different for a little bit. And I was approached by the former executive director of the Rape Crisis Center. And she said, I want you to kind of redo what it is that we're doing to help survivors and kind of what that work looks like on a direct service end. So I was brought in to do that work. And that was 4 years ago. She retired, and I became the co-executive director there. And then the executive director. And again, all while doing my shows, activism around theater artists of color, specifically Black artists and Black art. And also involved in politics in that, I do a lot of lobbying work, a lot of, this is what policies that we are really trying to push for in our county to make our county better and make sure that those are most vulnerable are cared for. And that's kind of what brought me into politics, because I was like, yeah, let's see what other changes in other spaces that I can do. And that's when I ran for county board, and I won that. and still was doing theater, still was working.
How many years have you been on the board now?
Only a year and a half. My term ends in April.
Oh, do you think you're going to re-up again?
So I am investigating things for the future.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Governor Palabana, here it coming.
Thank you, Governor Evers. Please stay where you are at. You are doing an amazing job.
Truly, that's
yes.
very true.
But, keeping options open because there are opportunities all over the place.
And not only have you been involved, as a fabulous actress, you've also produced shows, you've directed shows, you have done so many things, which I adore about you, because so many people get locked into the one thing of like, you know what, I'm only an actor, and I can only be on stage because I need to feed my ego.
Well, let me tell you, what I learned is that as I got older, my ego and my memory got less.
We were just talking about how quickly that goes.
Yes.
Yeah, memorization skills are one of the first things like pew.
Just leave your body. So I actually kind of started doing some directing. So I was like, y'all, I can't remember all these words in a row. And I'm maybe a Virgo control freak. And so I was like, well, maybe I'd like to see. I don't know. You don't know anything about that either. It's not like our birthdays are a day and a half apart. So, that's part of why I wanted to, there were shows that I wanted to do that other people weren't doing. So I started my own company and just started doing shows that way. I very much believe in paying artists. And so that was another reason why I started my own company, because then I could apply for grants and utilize those grants in the way that I wanted, and kind of determine what the money was being spent on. Looked at a lot of alternative spaces because some of the spaces were cost prohibitive or I did not feel comfortable working in those spaces. So I wanted to just do some of my own stuff. And that has been lovely. I enjoy having control over things. It's lovely.
Of course we do.
It's weird.
Which brings us now to your being back on the stage with Forward Theater's Company of Clyde. So how did that come about? Was that something that you would think, I think I should be on the stage again? Or did you know somebody who said, hey, Dana, I think you should audition for this piece of theater?
Well, the nice thing about a lot of the companies here is many of us work in many different areas. True. And so I've been connected to Forward for a little while doing what it is that you can do. Because, for most of us who are not professional actors, we have a day job.
Right.
And, when you are acting at the level of Forward, that is your day job. But for me, I couldn't do all of those things. I just wasn't afforded that privilege. And so I've directed shorts for them. I've directed a few things. I don't know that I've ever acted for them, but I have done a lot of directing in the places that I was able to fit into what their schedule looked like. But apparently, Celia Clare and Sam White went to Broadway, and they saw this show on Broadway, and they were like, oh, Forward needs to do this show. And in Celia's words, Celia said, I immediately thought of you as Clyde. And that was before I read the play, and I was like, so everything I've read about this lady is that she is a horrible person. Why did you think of me for this? Right.
Acting.
Right. I forget I'm also a decent actor, but I was like, for a minute, I was like a little offended. I was like, you guys really think I'm awful? But that's not true. So she brought it back, and then their committees looked through things. And so when they decided to do the show, they do auditions regionally, so they know actors, and they do submissions and things along those lines. And they approached me and said, we want you to audition for this role. We think, this could be something that works really well. And it was a Zoom audition with our director, Jake Penner. And it just felt really good. And what was lovely is he was, given direction during auditions. And sometimes, for those of us who have been doing this for a while, sometimes people don't give those veterans some of that feedback. They just let you do your thing instead of pushing you and shaping and molding what it is that you're doing. And that immediately made me go, okay, so yes, I love the script, and of course, always like to do shows, but specifically, I want to work with this director, because this director didn't say, oh, that was great. He said, I like what you did there, but here, I need you to pull back this way, and I want you to kind of think of how this is going here and try it like this. And I was like, hold on, let me get my chops together. And so it was a 25-minute experience, but it was a 25-minute experience that made me go, damn, I really hope I get this, because I think this could be a really great creative process. And then I was cast. And that was like 700 years ago. Feels like so many months ago.
Time also flies fast as we get older, doesn't it?
Flies. And then I just happen to have a ton of time off. And people have been saying to me, take time off. So I was like, yeah, I'll just take time off to do a play. It's fine.
And you also get to share the stage with another dear friend of ours, Sean Maganecker. So
Yes.
Tell me what that's like.
So it's lovely because you walk into a space with a relationship that is already established. And so, some of the first, when you are working with a professional theater, you're working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in a very short time span. So it's like 2.5 weeks of you have that time to put this together. So to make those relationships happen, it is a super fast track process. So we walked in to a space where we have never been. Sean and I, neither of us had acted main stage on with Forward, and having that relationship was comforting, and then I have been a huge fan of DeMonte Henning for a few years. I've seen him on stage as many times as I can go see him act. I find ways to go see him act. And I found out that he was going to be in the cast. And so immediately I was just like, oh, there are these two people who I respect so much and love their artistry and craft. And then I had seen Nadja just recently in a Forward show, and she just melted my heart from the moment I saw her on stage. And I was like, okay, we have this person. And then there was someone that was entirely new to me. So we have these people that were put together and had to create a relationship really, really quick. So having my friend there really helped balance me, because as outward facing as I am actually very shy. I don't like large group situations. I'm horrible at small talk. Like, these are not things I'm great at. There's reasons why people give me words and put me on stage to say them. So that was a really nice way for me to feel comfortable in a space that I just had not ever been in before.
And so tell me a little bit more about the play itself. So it's called Clyde's.
Yes.
And what is the premise of the play?
So Clyde's is a little sandwich shop that truckers go to in rural Pennsylvania. And Clyde is someone that was formerly incarcerated. I'm not going to tell you why. You got to come see the show. And she has this diner. And she hires all persons that are formerly incarcerated. And she might be involved in a little bit of shady business dealings. But the premise of the show, which is another beautiful thing about what I love with Lynn Nottage, who is the writer of this play, is it's really about a sandwich, and the perfect sandwich, and the care and thought and love that go into spaces when you may not have that in other spaces. And so I am used to plays that have Black people that are about horrific traumas. And not to say that, if having a play about all formerly incarcerated folks does not have trauma, but the focus is actually this sandwich, right? And what that connection looks like for people in this kitchen. And I am a chaos maker in this scenario. So you have all these lovely people who are working together, and then I show up and I create chaos, and then they are left to pick up whatever pieces I have left on the floor of themselves, of anything really that is happening. And it's a smartly written piece, and it is a piece that the language feels real and authentic. There's no cheap anything, It talks about life that these folks have in ways that ring true. And so I think it's a remarkable show in its normalcy, in wrapping in what life is. Because just because you are formerly incarcerated doesn't mean that every moment of your life is trauma. Sometimes you're at work and you're really thinking about, can I put some puttanesca on this sandwich? I don't know.
Of course you can.
Of course, right?
Can.
So I think it's a show that has hope, but it also not that fakey hope.
Right. And it's now, as I understand, it's the most produced play in the country right now. This in 2023.
I was on Facebook last night, and I was like, all right, because I stay away from anything. I don't watch a show before I see it, whether I'm directing or acting. I just don't want to be influenced by other people's artistic expression. I want to find my own space. So last night I was like, how many of these shows are happening right now? And literally this weekend, there were like 4 or 5 other productions that were opening in regional theaters across the country. So I was like, well, damn. And then I was like, who has the better clothes? Because Clyde has really great clothes throughout this show. So, of course, I had to peep and see what other people were wearing.
And has the playwright done other plays besides this?
Yep. The play that a lot of people know is Sweat.
Oh.
And what's fun about that is one of the characters in Sweat actually is a part of this piece. The Jason character that Sean plays, their backstory is actually in Sweat. And so we now are seeing them post this story. So now we're all like, who's the next character that's going to come out of? Where's the next thing? And fun fact, when Mercury did their first production, I found this out from Marcy Weiland this weekend, they chose Poof, which was one of Lynn's very first plays. And this was before she was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. So she was at the beginning. Mercury Players Theater was at the beginning. And they read her piece and were like, let's have her be one of the first things we do. So I love that Lynn is kind of interwoven even into our history here in our community.
Do you know, has anybody been in contact with her at all?
I'm sure there are people at Forward who are way more important and connected than I am that have been, but not that I am aware of.
That would be such an interesting thing for her to know, that what you just said about Madison Theater and what an influence.
Maybe I'll tweet her because I follow her on Twitter.
I think you should. I think it's well worth doing. So I'm assuming that Clyde is either always or it is written as a female role. Or is it not? Is it just,
here's the other thing that we found out.
Okay.
Because, we read the first part of the book for the very first time when we opened the script. This show actually started as being called Floyd's. And we were like, Floyd's. And the titular character, Floyd, was actually a white woman. And so we're like, what happened and changed?
Wow, really?
Oh, that's what I said.
Yeah,
I was like, what? So you go from Floyd's, which was the very first production of this show, and then it may have been like the read through or something where it was still seen, but it wasn't on Broadway. And then it moved to Clyde's, and then that main character changed. And the thing I actually would like to know from her is, do we have a copy of Floyd's? Like, what is different from the first iteration of the show? Because the other thing that is really cool about this piece, and me and the other actors of color have been talking about this a lot. So Ron, who plays Raphael, he's been doing theater professionally now for 12 years. That the show doesn't make it about him being a person of color, but that Spanish is just interwoven into life because that's what life is.
Right.
And same with us. We were talking about how Nadja at one of the talkbacks just said, I don't have to code switch. I can just relax into my culture and proudly display what that looks like on stage. And DeMonte and I both have had that same feeling. So, like, what is different with Floyd's? And how does that language look different with that title character?
Well, it's
in
also going to have to
particular?
change the entire concept of things. If
And the
that
dynamics of a black woman running a space versus a white woman. Right. So, like, so many layers.
Wow, that would be a fascinating conversation to have with her.
Yes.
So get me her
So
number.
as I say, and Lynn, when you are ready for that conversation, we are
totally
here.
do a Zoom interview with her. That would be
Absolutely.
great. And how
we'll fly to New York.
There we go. Yes, even better. And how interesting that she chose masculine names, even though the character has been a white woman and then a woman of color. It's just interesting how her thought process, like, why isn't it called Angie's? Or why isn't it called, like, Sophia's or whatever? I mean, it's just interesting that the characters for the title and for the name of the restaurant are masculine identified names.
Yes. I actually love that because, women in power have very distinct issues that they have to deal with. And so that Clyde presenting name, I wonder what that looks like for her in spaces. And I like playing around with that masculinity of having that name but also being a femme-identified person.
Fascinating. I didn't know any of that backstory, and that just really, really, really thought-provoking, too. To think about, you hear about plays going through iterations and rewriting and changing the characters, but that's such a huge change.
Absolutely.
That it would be really interesting to find out. Did you have that discussion at all when you were in the rehearsal process?
That's when we all kind of realized it, when we started our table reads and talking about what these characters, we were like, wait a second, what is this fine print down here? Floyd's. And then we all started kind of like Googling things right away. And we're like, what the heck, man? This is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's the other thing I really liked about this work was we did a lot of conversation about what moments meant and spent concentrated hours on it. I'm used to community theater where, we might have a couple of rehearsals, but that's, a 2-hour period. You get through a few things here and there, but we had the space to really delve into what does it mean when you give that look? What does it mean when she specifically lights her cigarette here? Why is it here? What about this space means this? And some of this is actor minutia because we are actors. But also we love the actor minutia. Mm-hmm. So that was a really great part of the process, is just to really delve into what are the intentions, what are the relationships, and how do they interplay with each other, and the moments and the beats throughout the show.
And is it for like adult audiences, or would you say like, maybe teenagers and up, or?
Well, it depends on how much cussing you're okay with.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's no situations. There is one incident of sexual harassment. But most of it is some pretty cussy language. And mostly by me. So,
okay.
So for most of the play, it is very PG. And then I walk in. It goes up a little bit. Yeah. But teens, I do know that there are teens that are coming to see it. There's nothing inappropriate. It's just how you feel about language. And some people, I don't know if I'd bring a 5-year-old.
Well, true. I wouldn't want to bring a 5-year-old to theater anyway, unless
I mean,
it was specifically for 5-year-olds.
Also valid.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of which, do you think Cobain's going to get a chance to see it?
My son is coming next weekend. And there are 3 people I am always afraid to have them see my shows because they're actually honest. Like, I believe the words that they're coming out of their mouth. 2 of them are highly critical. One of those is my son. So my son, who has written essentially soliloquies as to how I was wrong with my other productions. Now I'm like,
oh my goodness.
Oh no, he'll give me feedback. As soon as intermission comes, he's like, Act 1, Scene 3, this is what was happening, and really, this is how this should have gone. And then I have to like argue with him. It's really quite the thing. And then my friend Pete Ryberg, who was my first director at the Bartel, he will be like, I have sat with shows with him where I have directed the show, and he'll be sitting next to me, and he'll be like, you know that was wrong, right? And I'm like, I know. Here's why. He's like, no excuses. Just know it was wrong. And I was like, you're right. So he's coming tomorrow.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So who knows what my ego will do after tomorrow and next week's Saturday.
Well, it's a good thing you've got one under your belt, because from the little bit that I've heard, bits and pieces trickling down, thing is that people are singing your praises on this, and that
everyone is so good.
Seem to have had a really great, strong opening night. So
yeah, everyone is so good. I will say I had to work hard to keep up with these kids, because these kids are on it, and their characterizations are spot on. They push each other. They push me. So, this was great, because there's not any space where I went, maybe, no, because they were there before I was. So that was a very lovely experience.
So, in now that you've got this one under the belt, are there any things coming down the pike that you got your eyes set on that you can talk about today, or anything you would like to do that maybe haven't been set in stone yet?
Oh, so things I would like to do. So I would like to do slave play. I would like to do slave play. That is one that's a little harder to do, I think, being the subject matter and our community. So we'll see. But that's something that I have percolating in my head, and a good friend of mine is actually friends with Jeremy O'Harris, and he consulted with her because that is kind of her lifestyle. Not kind of, it is her lifestyle. She's very open about it. And before the play went up, him and her had a lot of conversations about what it meant to be in a BDSM master-slave relationship,
Wow.
right? That was after he saw her and her owner
Yeah.
on the front page of the New York Times art section on Sunday. And he was like, I'm writing a play about this. This is the lady I need to talk to. She'll be here the third week.
Wow.
I'm bringing all these people who are really seminal parts of my life to watch me do things.
And why not?
Why not?
And why not? That's what it's really all about.
Yes.
It's that whole thing of that's the joy of why we kind of do theater.
Yes.
It's the connections that you make, and the people who are like-minded, and some of the ones that aren't like-minded. You think, well, where have you been all this time?
Yes.
That's the part that I really, really, really love about it. Even if it's from anything, from professional theater to stand up to whatever, to community theater.
Yes.
I think that's part of the joy of doing it. And I think
Absolutely.
we're so lucky.
Especially here, because not every city has a theater scene like this.
We had this conversation every time, and we were always astonished. You look at the list of how many shows are up and running and how many companies there are compared to when I first came back to Madison. They were maybe the big 4, and that was about it.
Yep.
You were part of that. Good luck to you. Go to Milwaukee or go to Minneapolis or Chicago, where there were multiple theaters. Now we're right up there with them.
Absolutely.
And,
So we are very blessed in our community, of a community this size, to have this rich of a scene has been really great, because it ensures that a lot of us get to do some work.
And we had a lovely, lovely conversation with Sarah Day, who I had never ever sat down and talked to, who I respect so much and I just adore her. Little knowing that she lives 2 blocks away from me, and it's just like, wait a minute, why aren't we having coffee once a week? And we were talking about monies for the arts,
Yeah,
especially in the state of Wisconsin, number one, which is last in the country.
it is.
Dane County, which is getting a little better,
Yep.
but it's still not where it should be for the amount of money that should be being put in
Nope.
for the arts. And in Madison also, tucked away in our little bubble of Madison, it's disheartening to know that there aren't dollars being spent on our craft and our theater and our desires. And I know that you've jumped the bridge now to go from into the politics. Does that ever come up? Is that ever
Yeah.
anything that we can do to push that envelope a little further?
So, actually, in this budget that we're voting on Monday, there is something that I have pushed for our Dane County Cultural Arts Commission, that's going to pass in the budget that will allow probably about 40,000 more to come to be able to be utilized for artists and or programming, which great. But I will say, the struggle, and this is the things that I have learned on the politician side, really all surround budget and where our priorities are and where we're putting money. And this will be the political part of this conversation. So I look at what our priorities are, and this is part of the reason why I'm in this, is to say, let's take a look at our priorities. Let's decide where our money goes. And, we get a lot of flack for things that have buzzwords like defund the police. And instead, what we like to talk about is, where is the money best used? Who's doing the right job? And let's give the money to those who are doing the right job. And then when there's extras, because it is hard to be able to connect with art when you don't have food, when you don't have housing, when you don't have base security. And so as passionate as I am about funding arts, I will say my bigger passion is funding basic human rights for those that live here, and defunding spaces that are harmful to us, or looking at how you allocate funds for things that you may not need or could be utilized for something else, like a $28 million giraffe cage. Not bitter. It's totally not bitter.
And I said, in the short amount of time that I was on the Dane County Cultural Art, that was the most frustrating thing in the world, where you have a committee, you have like-minded people, and then you go up against the naysayers that were like, no, we're slashing this. No, that's not in the budget. No. And it's like, it's so disheartening and it's so frustrating that you just want to take a sledgehammer. And that's, which is probably why I never wanted to go into politics, because I would never, ever, ever, the frustration level would, my Sicilian temper would get the best of me, and I would be in lockup. And Sheriff Mahoney isn't there anymore to get me out.
and here's, when you look at some base things, we have to make decisions on, does money go to a food pantry or does money go to a community center? And both of those provide basic needs. And then do we take money away from that to fund artistic endeavors? Some people are like, I don't know if I can do that until we get some of our base things cared for, which is where that weird line is. And which is also when I look at our federal government, who has money to do things, our state, who could do a better job of funding. We can't always rely on local municipalities, because quite frankly, they have so many things that they have to take care of. And I also look at who gets funding, why they get funding, and who is eligible for grants. You have to be a 501c3,
Right.
or you have to have a fiscal receiver.
Right.
And not everybody has the ability to do that. You then have to have a grant writer. And that's hard.
It is very hard.
And when you're looking at national grants, they're funding bigger things. So then, where does grassroots art come in? And it has been an amazing, happy, and sad experience working with an arts organization that has money, because at some point something was happening, and the director was like, "Well, I'll just hand that to the money people, and they take care of it." And I was like, the money people?
Wait,
who are they?
Really?
Where do I get these people? But it's so amazing because they have the privilege to be able to do that, and it makes the art much better. This is the only show where I've only had to do one job. My one job is acting. I don't have to direct.
Yep.
I don't have to produce. I don't have to, help find props. It is literally, I go, "Oh, right here on this page, it says I should have this, and this one doesn't look right." And then they go, "You're right, that doesn't. Let's make this." And you're like, "Thank you." So that's how all of us should be funded. That is how all of us should be funded. But, we in our world have got to make room for different priorities, including priorities of art. So, that to me is... it is important, and also it is really hard at a local level because you get this much money, and where do you draw the line,
And thank goodness we have philanthropic people in this town, because
so
the difference would be night and day if we didn't have the people who had the deep pockets say, "You know what, I think we're going to give some of that cash to the arts, or to
or even the in-kind." So all of the
exactly.
food, and there is a ton of food on Clyde's, is donated by Metcalf's. They're amazing. Because that would cost us so much money. Food prices these days are out of control. And again, this whole show is about making food. So, having the community members step up and say, "We believe in the art that is happening," is priceless. And the private donations, the foundations here, I know Madison Community Foundation does a lot of that. True Stage, I know, has moved into some of that. American Family Insurance. Like, there are so many people here that are like, we want to give money. Now, the next step is, what does it look like to give money in an application process that is not as onerous? What does it look like to give money to those that are not 501c3s?
Right.
And so expanding the idea of how arts giving works, knowing that the reason why you can have these large, very good places is because you have this groundswell of grassroots art. I think about Joel Gersman in particular. We are who we are because Joel Gersman busted open doors, whether that be through nudity or through having his actors yell at the audience the entire play. That groundbreaking grassroots art allowed us to be who we are. They birthed Mercury Players Theater, and that's important. So how do we get that money into the current day Joel Gersman's hands?
And that's something that I bet Dana Pellebon is going to find the answer to
One day.
sooner or later, because if anybody can do it, I tell you, it's the woman sitting right over here, because she is not only a treasure to Madison, she's a force of nature who gets things done. And I am so honored to have shared many moments with you.
Many
Red
red carpet moments.
Red carpet moments. Oh, yes, indeed.
Don't look at our
scandalous
Facebook.
red carpet moments. So do yourself a huge favor and get tickets to go and see Clyde. Oh, I wanted to ask you, now, before I forget, so you're talking about there's a lot of food in there. And I'm assuming that the actors are actually eating the food that's in there. Have there been any moments where it's like, uh-oh.
We've had so many, there are things that happen new and different every night. And we just are like, what's going to happen next? Like there's one scene where it literally concentrates on the sandwich and it wasn't preset. And so they were like, we're going to talk around the one thing that we were actually supposed to be talking until finally, and I'm actually backstage. So I was like, oh my God, they are stuck. And our stage managers are running around going, what do we do? How do we? And so they're out there struggling. They're out here running. And I'm just like, I'm going to sit right here in this corner because I can't help
because
you.
I'm just the actor.
Like, I can't help anything. But then one of the actors brilliantly was like, I know the stage management is figuring this out, so I'm going to stand here by this entrance that they will be able to see me, and I can see both entrances. So if I've got to go walk across stage because I see them over there with the sandwich, I'm going to go do that. And they eventually did. She got the thing, and then the scene went on as if nothing happened, and no one in the audience noticed a single fucking thing.
That's brilliant. I love stuff like that. I just love stuff like that.
It's great, and who knows what will happen tonight. Like,
even more reason to buy a ticket to go see, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Don't know what's going to happen.
And it's all about sandwiches, so how can you go wrong? And you get to see Dana Pellebaum being fabulous on stage.
Great outfits too. I have great outfits and shoes.
Excellent. Dana, thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule. Congratulations on what I'm sure is going to be a huge, huge, huge successful run for you and for Forward Theater. And really, seriously, go get tickets because it sounds wonderful.
And we are very low on tickets. Literally every night has less than 20, 30 tickets through the rest of the run.
It's in the Playhouse, right?
It's in the Playhouse.
That's very limited seating anyway, right?
Yeah, I think we seat about 300, and we're pretty close to sold for almost every performance. So if you are interested in seeing the show, you need to go buy tickets now.
Wow. Great. Wonderful. Well, as usual, this has been a lovely, lovely afternoon with Dana Pellebaum, Forward Theater Company's production of Clyde's, which I cannot wait to see. I'm Michael Bruno. I'm your host of Showbiz Buzz with Bruno. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Please take care of yourselves and support the arts. Thank you. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks.